So here's another, in a sense, national policy question from Kevin Kelly. Can we learn anything about reforming capitalism from China?
Right. So, my previous book was called The Entrepreneurial State, and when I think of China, I think of the adaptive state. China, really interestingly, I think, is learning from the US in a moment that the US is unlearning from itself. It struck me that the first thing Trump did when he came into office was actually attack particular public organizations, ARPA-E and PBS. And what China's been doing, and I think there's a question on whether it's going to be successful or not, is forming actually quite active investor, kind of innovative public organizations, but they're huge. They're huge. It's not a decentralized network of public organizations across the whole innovation chain as we had in the US. So the Chinese Development Bank is a massive financial institution which has provided loans up to $9 billion for many of its companies, including Huawei. Huawei wouldn't exist without the Chinese Development Bank. By the way, Huawei, which is in the news a lot, is a cooperative. Can you believe that? It was quite fun. Oops, sorry. In Dalian, I met, they had a tea ceremony in Dalian, China, because the World Economic Forum has a youth component that meets in Dalian. And Huawei executives asked me and 3 other economists, this was back in, I think, 2013, to meet with them, to say, what should we do about the US? It was very strange, thinking about what's happening now. And we were like, what do you mean? They're like, well, yeah, it's really hard in the US. We're not really penetrating the market. And my advice was, tell them you're a cooperative. Just in terms of kind of getting, what I think is interesting in China is there's a lot of variety. There's not one model. There's lots of different types of organizations, hence the Huawei example. It's a cooperative, there's state-owned companies. There's companies that are actually going more towards, slowly, I think, a more market-driven, kind of Anglo-Saxon model almost. But there's variety there. There's also much more meritocracy in terms of who works in government than we have in many countries. In the UK, there's very little meritocracy in terms of who actually rises up in government. There's lots of experiments actually at the community level, but it is also, it's has problems of democracy. So it's not one, it's not a cut and paste model from, communist versus capitalist, but how it evolves, the degree to which there is engagement. For example, they're spending $1.7 trillion on greening their economy, coming back to the green missions. And this is out of urgency. And it's really interesting how also in the US, big things happen when there is urgency, when there's war. I don't know if you've seen also the documentary on the Roosevelts, it's fantastic. When there was urgency, big things happen in the US. And so the degree to which this urgency creates, because of pollution, is creating both a very positive change, so 1.7 trillion on greening the economy, including energy-friendly technologies, not just renewable energy, but also kind of that rush to create and invest and not focus on really rebalancing the whole economy, for example, around consumption and services, is causing the economy to be unbalanced.